Alright, so we're going to do a quick run through on taking your boat apart, splitting it in half so you can replace your transom, rerun some lines, do sump pumps, do electrical, whatever you want to do, whatever the purpose is. First things first, if you have an outboard motor, you're going to go ahead and pop that off. I ended up putting some support bolts in my ceiling with eye hooks so I could lift the motor up with some ratchet straps. I just laid it over on its side and rolled it out of the way. But you can get an engine stand, or you can do it like me for super cheap. So be very precise about your wiring, unwiring your boat motor, write all the colors down where they go so you can reattach that. Second step to dismantling your boat is going to be the rubber trim going around. So your rubber trim is held in by stainless steel screws, and it sits over, and there's either screws or rivets, so you can either drill them out or unscrew them. And once you pop your trim off, underneath will be even more rivets or screws. So you're going to go ahead and pop that off. And then, after you get your trim completely popped off, you go around your entire boat. Make sure all your rivets are off. You got to go on the inside of the boat. Let me take you in there real quick. Okay, it doesn't matter if you do this first or last, but on the inside of your boat, you're going to have this lip that meets to the carpet. So you're going to have to peel your carpet back, most likely, at least on the edges. And mine, I've got a shelf that comes up, so I had to go all the way around. And you can see the outline. Now there's going to be screws every so often, or rivets, and you're going to unscrew those. This boat has previously been split, so when they put this back on, they fiberglassed over my screws, so I had to grind pretty much them off, and the grinder didn't work too well. So I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a reciprocating tool from Harbor Freight for 20 bucks. And you get some carbide bits, and you can finish this whole thing in under 2 hours. Because if your screws are stripped, they're going to be very hard to cut through. So you can notch around it, the screw, and then everywhere you're going to want to go around with the tool, getting underneath, splitting the fiberglass from the bottom of your boat. You're just going to go around entirely. There's going to be pieces that don't have any. You're going to go ahead and just go around. It is very important that when you're doing any fiberglass work, cutting any fiberglass, you use a mask. Because fiberglass in your lungs, cancer, and just a really bad time. So, definitely wear a mask. So, once you get all this cut, grinded or removed, before you put it back down, you're going to need to grind your surface flat or cut it flat. Now, for my boat, I have pieces, and you're going to check in each compartment. So, each little storage area, you want to make sure there's no walls where it touches the outside. So for me, I had to cut the fiberglass here and there where it goes up. Another place for me is in the back. I had to look through my storage, my battery storage and gas tank. I had 2 additional fiberglass supports that I had to cut clean off the top. And then I had an additional one up front. So you're going to want to go around your whole boat, and you're going to have to peel the carpet back. That's just something you're going to have to do. Just peek everywhere you can get your eyeballs. Make sure you don't have any fiberglass connecting to the walls or the floor. Alright, so after you make sure you've cut away all the fiberglass supports going around in your floor, you're then going to very carefully watch your wiring. You might want to disconnect wiring. All boats are different. My boat was wired horrendously awful. Just really bad. So I had to disconnect a lot of electronics before I even started attempting to lift the boat up. One thing I do recommend doing, if I can find it, you're going to want to use those metals, like putty scrapers, basically. So for instance, I got this metal putty scraper, and I went, and you don't have to like scrape anything off, as long as you can push up, because this lip sits over that bottom lip like this. So you want to wedge this up inside and behind here, and just pretty much along the whole boat to save you trouble. You're just going to push this. Doesn't matter if it's a flathead screwdriver or whatever you got. Just go ahead and just separate the whole boat like that. That way, if you got any glue, any caulk, any rivets that you just can't physically see, you know they're knocked out. So the next step, get your boat in your garage or under your carport, where it will presumably be for the next month. Realistically, the next month or even longer. If you can do it under a week, great. I didn't position my boat sideways, so I can't open my garage door. Because the way I popped my roof off the boat, I can open the garage a little bit. I got some stainless steel eye bolts, and you want to gauge. I ended up only needing 3 2x4s. I got 4 of them. This is just what my boat needed. Now, to start separating your boat, put your eye hooks in. I would lay the 2x4s on the top of your boat every, so often. That way you can gauge where you want to hook your eye bolts. Because you can twist your 2x4s however you need to. But go ahead, mark out where you want it in your garage. Put some eye bolts in, make sure they're going into studs. I made sure every single one of my eye bolts goes into studs. Now, depending on the condition of your boat, you can actually hook to your handrails and slowly ratchet strap the handrails to lift up your boat just a little bit. For me, I ended up using a scissor jack. Because everywhere you have a hand railing, there should be a piece of wood which those are screwed into. For me, my boat was really stubborn because it had been apart before, so they put it back together really good. So what I ended up doing, it did not want to budge for me. So I ended up putting a scissor jack in between the mount for my trolling motor in my trailer. And so I pushed it up just enough to get a 2x4 slid up underneath it. And I would come along and lift up the 2x4 to split the boat from the surface, from the bottom. Now, once you go around, you can wedge that 2x4 as far as you can, wedging. But ratchet straps are going to be your easiest bet and hooking them to the handrails. You shouldn't have a problem as long as it's not completely rotten, and you can gauge that because you'll hear the boat separate. And you don't want to just crank one ratchet strap. You want to do them all evenly. So once you get the boat lifted up just enough, you can actually start disconnecting one ratchet strap at a time. My boat can be supported by just, the way I did it was I had the ratchet straps hooked here and up front, and then I put a 2x4 under this middle piece, and then I removed this strap and hooked it up to the 2x4 ratchet strap this piece up. Then once it was tightened, I then disconnected these one at a time, very slowly, making sure the boat doesn't tumble down. I was able to pop the back two off, put the 2x4 underneath it, hook the straps to the 2x4, get it nice and tight, come to the front, do the same for this middle piece, because the very front of my boat is still being held up by the trolling motor mount. Just because I didn't feel like cutting my fourth piece of wood, I was confident that this is strong enough. And so with it up, I can actually move my boat back and forth and not worry about it breaking. These are just the cheapest 2x4s. And so if you're worried about them breaking, you can always put 2x2 side by side and stand them upright. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. When you're lifting the boat up, just be very cautious of your wiring. And it should just come right off. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll respond to them the best I can.